For pretty much all of human history, eating animals was just normal, natural, and crucially, necessary. But what happens when that last word, necessary, starts to look a bit shaky? Today, we're going to dive into a modern case for compassion, an argument built on some really fascinating science, the sheer scale of things, and this idea of sentience. So yeah, let's get into it.
And that really is the heart of the matter, isn't it? I mean, now that we have grocery stores packed with all kinds of food and we understand nutrition so much better, does that old justification still make sense? It's a tough question, and it really forces us to peel back the layers of tradition and just ask, why are we doing this?
Okay, so the whole argument we're looking at today really hinges on this one simple idea. It's a principle that, honestly, most of us probably already agree with. Unnecessary suffering is wrong, right? It feels obvious. We think it's wrong to cause pain if you don't have a really good reason. This isn't some wild, out-there concept. It's the bedrock for everything we're about to unpack.
All right, so to build this case, you got to start with the evidence. We're going to look at the facts from three big areas: the science of what animals actually experience, the mind-boggling scale of the whole thing, and what it all means for, well, all of us.
You know, we've come a long way from thinking animals are just simple machines that react to things. Science now shows us pretty clearly that they have the biological toolkit for pain. Pain receptors, the whole deal. And you see it in their behavior, right? We've got pigs that can solve puzzles, chickens that are incredibly protective mothers, cows that make best friends. This isn't just a bunch of cute stories. It's documented science that points to real, conscious experiences.
And this is where the scale just hits you. 80 billion. That's how many land animals are raised for food every single year. I mean, that number is so huge it's almost meaningless. It's hard to even picture. But it gives you a sense of the sheer size of the system we're talking about.
Now look at this chart. It tells a really interesting story about inefficiency. We use a whopping 77% of all our agricultural land for livestock. That's for them to graze or for us to grow their food. But get this, for all that space, for all that land, it only gives us about 18% of our global calories. That's a massive footprint for a pretty small return on the plate.
And it's not just land. The story with water is just as wild. Just look at these numbers. For 1 kilogram of beef, you're looking at around 15,000 liters of water. 15,000! Now compare that to wheat or potatoes, which is way down at just 300 liters. It's just a crazy difference. It really shows you how thirsty, so to speak, some of these animal products are compared to staple crops.
And then there's the health angle for us humans. I mean, the science here is getting pretty clear. Lots of big studies have linked high consumption of red meat to some serious health risks like heart disease and cancer. But on the other hand, plant-rich diets, they're consistently tied to better health. So when it comes to our own bodies, the evidence seems to be pointing in one direction.
Okay, so we've laid out the evidence, the science, the scale, the health stuff. Now let's put it all together. Let's imagine we're in a courtroom. We've got the prosecution presenting its case, and then we'll hear from the defense with some common counter-arguments.
So the prosecution's case is actually pretty simple. It's a step-by-step argument. Step 1, causing unnecessary suffering is wrong. We talked about that. Step 2, this industry causes a ton of suffering. We saw the scale. And step 3, we can be perfectly healthy without eating animals. So if you agree with those first 3 points, the argument is that the conclusion, well, it just kind of follows logically.
All right, let's hear from the defense.
A super common argument you hear is, well, eating animals is natural. And okay, fair enough, but the rebuttal here is pretty sharp. It says, sure, lots of things are natural. Earthquakes are natural. Disease is natural. That doesn't make them good or something we should be doing.
And this is actually a well-known logical hiccup. It's called the appeal to nature fallacy. It's this mistake we sometimes make where we think, if it's natural, it must be moral or right. But it's a mental shortcut that falls apart when you think about it, because nature itself doesn't have a moral compass. It just is.
Okay, next up from the defense. But humans have always eaten meat, the appeal to tradition. And the counter-argument is just as direct. So what? I mean, human history is full of traditions that we now look back on and say, yikes, that was not okay. Just because we've done something for a long time doesn't automatically make it the right thing to do today.
Then you've got the classic, but animals eat other animals in the wild, the whole lion and gazelle thing. The response here points to a really important difference: moral agency. A lion isn't sitting around thinking about the ethics of its lunch. It's acting on instinct. We humans, on the other hand, can think about right and wrong. We can make these complex ethical choices. And that ability, the argument goes, gives us a different kind of responsibility.
And the last big defense argument is usually about intelligence. Well, animals just aren't as smart as us. But the rebuttal here really cuts to the core of it. It asks a powerful question. Is intelligence really the right measuring stick for moral worth? The argument says no. The real question isn't, can they do math? It's, can they feel pain? Can they suffer? And as we've seen, the science on that is pretty clear.
So, we've heard the evidence, we've listened to the arguments from both sides, now it's time to bring it all home and look at the final verdict that this case presents.
So let's just boil the core logic down one last time. It goes like this. 1, we know from science that animals can suffer. 2, we know from science that we don't strictly need to eat them to survive and be healthy. So if you take away the necessity argument, what are you left with? The argument says you're just left with the suffering.
And this really gets to the final point from the source material. The conclusion here isn't presented as some crazy, radical new idea. It's framed as an act of being consistent. It's about taking that principle we all basically agree on, don't cause unnecessary suffering, and just applying it consistently, even to the food on our plates, an area where maybe we haven't always thought about it that way.
Which leaves us with this one big final question to think about. We've seen a case where the science and our own ethics seem to be lining up and pointing in the same direction. So the question becomes, when that happens, what comes next?